Stop pushing that button.
I think your seat's over there.
Danny, the new IT guy.
Well, he's actually run it. He did it with planning and zoning the other day. Or was he, I think it was planning.
Thank you.
He's the most experienced.
Thank you, Danny.
Get me trying to get
Yes, it did. We're good. Mayor, we're good.
Good to go.
We
Thank you.
appreciate your contribution today, Danny.
I learned everything I know from Mr. Burns.
Okay, I have 4:35, and at this time we will call the meeting of the St. Canyon City Commission to order. With that, Mayor Pro Tem, would you leave some indications?
I'd be glad to. Heavenly Father, Lord, we just thank you so much for all that you do for us. Father, we come to you with heavy hearts, just thinking about the David Hoff family, his family, his personal family, and his family here at the city of Canyon, specifically the Canyon Fire Department. Would just be with them and lift them up, and what a great contribution to this city and the safety of all citizens he contributed. We're so thankful for that, Father. Father, just continue to bless the city and put your hedge of protection around the men and women that serve this city and the citizens themselves, Father. Just be with us as we make decisions tonight for the future of our city, and be with us when we mess it up. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Say the pledge with me.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, that takes us to the approval of the minutes of the meeting of September 6, 2022.
No changes, I move we approve.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve the minutes as written. All in favor, signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, like sign. The motion passes. All right, I think we will go ahead and go to item number 6 to conduct a public hearing and consider and take appropriate action on ordinance number, one second. I skipped item number 5, public comments from interested citizens. I think we have one that signed in, but I'm gonna wait and have that for the agenda item here in just a second regarding the parks. And if no one else signed.
Nobody has signed in, Mayor.
All right, and we'll go ahead, conduct a public hearing and consider and take appropriate action on ordinance number 1164, an ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Canyon, Texas, rezoning Spring Canyon Unit Number 3, in addition to the City of Canyon, Randall County, Texas, providing that the zoning classification be posted upon the zoning district maps of the City of Canyon, providing that all ordinance or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith are expressly repealed, and providing for an effective date. Rezoning request is for SFA, Single Family Agriculture Residential District, to be zoned as SFE, Single Family Estate Residential District. Dan?
Mayor, this will be the next phase of Spring Canyon. It's actually unit number 3, be located north and east of unit number 2. First step, we'll look at the plat here in just a moment. The first step is the zoning, as you mentioned, and they requested single family estate SFE, which is those larger lots we've grown used to in Spring Canyon. They'll have half-acre lots, minimum half-acre lots. There'll be some that are larger. Sent out notices to 7 property owners and just received 1 response, and they were in favor of the request. There will be no commercial lots in this particular phase, just single family lots. So the P&Z did vote unanimously to recommend approval of the zoning request. This is very simple. This meets our future use plan map. It follows that. It also follows their original concept plans, which we've looked at before, so nothing new under the sun here, unless these guys have something to add.
David, you or Dustin?
I think you guys have all seen it before. I think we're good unless you have questions.
Mr. Mayor, I move we adopt ordinance 1160.
Nope, I'm sorry.
Nope.
No, we've got to have a public hearing
Oh,
here,
wait.
so, if there's not any other discussion, we will open, the public hearing. And, I think no one's signed in.
Nobody has signed in.
So, and we will close the public hearing, and we have a motion.
Yes, I move we adopt ordinance 1164, rezoning the proposed Canyon Spring Unit number 3.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, like sign. The motion passes. All right, that takes us to item number 7. Consider and take appropriate action on the plat for Spring Canyon Unit number 3. Danny?
And again, this is the plat. We'll always take action on the zoning first. This is the plat. This would be a 64.37 acre. There'd be 60 lots, all residential. As we're used to in Spring Canyon, there's not city sewer available at these locations, so it's all going to be OSSF or septic systems. The city has the water rights to that whole development, as you guys are aware, so most lots will be tied on the city water. There'll be a few lots that will be on private water wells because they're not servable. And you guys probably tell me better than that. I believe it's down along
Cul-de-sac going to the south.
Riverview, which is the cul-de-sac going south. There's a few lots. How many? About 10 lots? 10 lots that will have private water wells on it. Now, since the city has the water rights to all these water wells will be monitored. They'll be metered, and then that usage fee will be paid to the city each month, similar to having on water metering. But I think Joe's worked out a separate rate for them.
City water for drinking too, or they just have water wells?
City water they'll have drinking water through the city mains, through the city water supply system, as well as 10 lots that are unservable by those city water mains that will be on private water wells. But since we have the water rights, they will be metered and they will pay a water usage fee. You guys notice on the plat, at first glance you'd wonder where are they getting out of this subdivision. They'll have access through units number 1 and unit number 2, which will lead them to Country Club and FM 2590. There's also, as you can see, Spring Canyon Parkway.
You want me to zoom in somewhere?
No, I think you're good. You can see that right in the middle. Spring Canyon Parkway is the main thoroughfare that goes east and west through there. Has some islands in it. They will have some, possibly. David will correct me if I commit him to this. But there may be a bridge crossing that'll give them access to I-27 at some point in time. But at this point in time, their access will be to FM 2590 and Country Club, the units number 1 and units number 2. I think that's about all I have to say about it, unless you guys have some questions.
More questions or entertain a motion?
I move that we approve the plat for Spring Canyon Unit number 3.
Second. Have a motion second to approve the plat for Spring Canyon Unit number 3. All in favor signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, like sign. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you guys.
Thank you all. All right, I think we are going to move forward. Got a couple of visitors here. and would like to move forward to item number 12. To consider and take appropriate action on ordinance number 1165, an ordinance of the city of Canyon, Texas, designating certain real property owned by the city as a public park to be used for recreational purposes in accordance with the municipal municipal charter of the city of Canyon, and providing for severability and an effective date. John, looks like you're leading this one off.
Yes, as y'all know, many moons ago, we bought water rights and bought property and bought land. And one of the pieces we bought is right there by stadium formerly known as Kimbrough Stadium, Happy State Bank Stadium today. And we had a resident, one time, I think he gave me a call. I don't remember who he called. He bothers me sometimes, so he might have called me first. And Neil Henders called me and said, we need to do something out here. We need to get some bike trails going, and we need some stuff going on. And so he hooked up with Brian, and Brian Potsimony got involved, and other folks got involved, and all of a sudden we created miles and miles of bike trails out of a space that's really not real useful for anything else. So as we moved along, we never did dedicate that as a park, just like we hadn't done Brown Road. And so we wanted to come back to you all and go ahead and formally dedicate that, knowing that once we dedicate that as a park, the citizens would have to vote for it to be sold or and not be a park any longer. It would have to go to an election. And those are the kind of things that usually don't happen as far as those type of elections or people wanting to give away some park. So we want to go ahead as a city, and if we can protect that now, we can dedicate it and have a great bike trail, a great bike park. But
Neil, you have signed in, and Chris Potsimony's
Yeah,
here
you
too.
guys.
Would you two come forward and maybe just talk a little bit about it? And I personally go out there, and there are a few of us hikers. There are mostly bikers out there, and I saw a trail runner Saturday too. But if you all would come, just talk about it and the miles of trails you put in and some of your work. So, but.
Mayor, commissioners, and city manager. Yeah. So thank you all. I want to thank you first for the enthusiasm when we brought this up. I was lucky. Gary was on the commission at the time, and Linda Henders, his wife, was on the school board, and so I knew that one of them would know whose land that was out there. And so I asked at a family gathering who it was, and then so found out, and then called John Burns, and then figured out that there was some interest in it. And I'd been riding out at Palo Duro Canyon a good bit, and about the time that Rock Garden Trail was being built. And if you don't know Chris Potsimony, I'll let him tell you, well, what is your title now as far as
Okay,
trail
so
building?
I work for the Fairley Foundation in Amarillo, and my title is Community Health Ambassador. Now, all the bike trails and hiking trails that I've built across the Panhandle, I started that many years ago when I was a state employee with the state of Texas, of course. And the Fairleys came to me and said, let's do this full time. So I've only been doing this full time for about a year and a half. At the time, I was still a state employee, and have built trails all over the Panhandle, and really the Buffalo Hill was kind of the jumping off point for that. It's really been an example for what other communities across the Panhandle can do, and has allowed us to go into these other communities and build trail systems just like Buffalo Hill. We've got trail parks in Borger, Dalhart, Spearman. We've got 3 parks in Amarillo, but really this was the start of mass trail development across the Panhandle.
So, and I don't know, but Chris didn't say, but his time when he's been building the trails prior to being employed by the foundation has been volunteers and volunteer work, and then he organized the volunteers. And so pretty much all of the trail building out at the trails was by volunteers, and it's still maintained primarily by volunteers. Brian Knoll does get the parks out there every so often and shreds a little bit, but, you know, and so there is some of that going on as well. So there is help, but Brian is very supportive of us and the bike trails, and he'd like to do more as well. But no, it's been a great benefit to me personally, you know, getting out there and getting the exercise and getting the stress relief and all of that from that. And so, you know, I would hope that you would vote to proceed and make it formally make it a park.
I did leave out an important part. Yes, I work for the Fairley Foundation, but my business partners and I started Six Pack Outdoors about 7 years ago. We were a 501c nonprofit, and it's through that business that we fund all the trail maintenance and trail building activities. For the last 4 or 5 years, we've paid for the portable units stationed out at Buffalo Hill. Yeah, I think it costs us something like $75 a month to provide restroom activities or facilities. I think a big turning point was when the city gave us water with the new pipeline, and we very much appreciate that, and that's tremendously helped with the development of the trail system out there.
How many miles are there?
There's 6.5 miles of trail, and which is pretty good considering we only have about 50 acres. It's a little tight. We call that spaghetti. It's kind of what it looks like whenever you look at the aerial maps of the place, but it flows really well. It's a lot of fun. The old caliche pit in the middle of the property gives us some challenging, kind of exciting terrain to work with, and the bikers and the hikers and the trail runners, they all really appreciate the fact that we have this facility. So thank you all, City of Canyon, for providing that for us.
And if you haven't been out there, it is good for hiking, and then there are like 3 different sections of it. There's the Highlands, which is flat, so it's good for anybody riding in the caliche pits, and then on down into the hill. And so it's a fun place to go out and get an hour and a half of riding and some exercise. So.
And we've had some races out there, and is that correct? Is that correct?
Absolutely. At least once per year for the last 7 or 8 years. We have had some years we've had 2 or 3 races out there. We call it the Buffalo Stampede is what the name of the race that we hold out there every year is called. And we usually have, you know, in the neighborhood of about 100 people participate in that. And I tell you, over the last couple of years, it's really been a godsend, especially with COVID, when we were all cooped up in our homes and you couldn't go out and you couldn't go to work. You couldn't go to the movies or other places that people gathered pre-COVID. But every night there were 200 people out at Buffalo Hill, and it really gave us a place for our community to get out and blow off some steam and, you know, recreate. So.
Did you see the article at the bottom of the stairs where Texas Town and City highlighted?
I did not.
Be sure it's in a frame down at the bottom of the stairs to your left.
Chris, somebody's done a lot of work out there too in the last month or 2, and I know some diversions and leveling out some, and there was a 2-foot hole in one of the trails at a point.
Right, we had a volunteer trail work day last month where, you know, we advertised that on our Facebook page, on our Six Pack Outdoors Facebook page, and we just call for volunteers from the community to go out and help pick up litter, to mow. There are some areas on the trails that are not reachable by the city equipment. So we'll go and hit those areas. If there's erosion damage, we go and repair those. We go out 2 or 3 times a year to do some, you know, mild maintenance activities at the trail system.
Thank you both. Appreciate all the efforts and the vision to take it here too. So, any other questions for these 2 or John?
More jumps on the Highlands to get rid of all the hikers.
There you go. Second class citizens here, so yeah.
We're friendly to y'all.
Just room for plenty for everybody, so.
All right, thank you all.
Thank you.
That said, staff would recommend a motion on this ordinance.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion we adopt ordinance 1165 designating canyon trails at Buffalo Hill as a park.
Second. Have a motion and second to adopt ordinance number 1165. All in favor signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, like sign. The motion passes. Well, thank you all. Thank you again for all your work on it.
Thank you all.
All right, that takes us to item number 8, to consider and take appropriate action on update on ISO action plan and AFG Safer grant status from Fire Chief Dennis Quinn. Chief.
Afternoon, Mayor, Commissioners. I just want to take a little bit of time to give you an update where we were on our ISO action plan and the Safer grant. As you know, we just recently went through an ISO survey this past summer, and the results of that survey is that we were going to regress from a 2 rating to a 4 rating. We have filed our action plan with ISO, and it has been accepted. Those actions include updated fire hydrant flow records being forwarded to them. We had a little bit of difficulty in the correct records being submitted the first time, but that's been corrected. We'll be updating our 2012 edition of the fire code to the 2021 edition, which will help our rating. In the process of adding additional paid firefighters so that we can get the ladder truck to respond to all first alarm structure fires. We'll say that we've been having some success with that, and we'll be moving forward with that. We're getting the trucks out. Then we'll also be conducting additional training drills at the training facility, and we're going to be updating and acquiring more additional pre-fire plans to be developed in that. So as long as we are making progress over the next 12 months, ISO will be checking in quarterly to see how we're doing on our progress. We will remain a 2 rating as long as we're moving forward. And that'll occur over the next 12 months. And also our ISO consultant, Mr. Peach, that made a short presentation, he has told us that could even possibly go into the 24 months as long as we're making progress. We'll remain that ISO 2. Now, if our progress stops, we definitely will achieve a 3. But to get to the 2, we've got to keep moving forward, especially with additional staffing, so that we can get the apparatus out as needed when needed. Any questions on our ISO?
So Chief, if we would get the grant, we get the additional 6 firefighters. So I was thinking 3 was the best we could do, but if we're moving forward and we get that, is there a possibility?
It's going to all be up to ISO, how they look at our improvements happening out of our control. So that will help. Moving into that, great segue into the Safer grant. They began making awards on August the 28th. As of this past Wednesday, when I wrote this memo, 118 awards totaling $360 million have been made. That has, with the $360 million being awarded, there's still $200 million out there that was allocated for this grant funding. However, we're in a kind of a confusing state right now because we had learned or been told that FEMA said at the September 30th mark, no further awards would be made. However, there's still $200 million out there to be awarded, and we have not received a turn down notice yet. So we are in a stage of unknown right now. We've made contact, tried to make contact with our FEMA representative in the Dallas area. Have not received a reply to the email I sent. I tried to call today, left a voicemail, still have not gotten a word back. Trying to confirm, is Safer awards over with, or are they still going, or will they still be awarding the $200 million that was allocated for that? So, best case scenario, it's still in play, and we are still being considered for our 6 firefighters.
They've only awarded 6 in Texas
Yes.
so far.
And there were some very large awards, I'm talking $8 and $9 million range, to some larger departments, and I'm sure that's for retention of firefighters that have been laid off.
Put in the Farmers Association got 2.1 million.
Yes, for recruitment and retention.
We would be, if they had awarded ours, it'd have been the least amount on this list. By half.
So 5 awards, thank you, Joe. 5 awards in the state of Texas so far. We're still just trying to figure out what the status of the Safer Grant Awards is for this round. If we do not get the Safer Grant Award, if it's over with or we do not get one, I would like to move forward with hiring the 2 full-time positions that have been budgeted in the 22-23 budget year, and look at reapplying for a Safer Grant this next round, which would be opening up probably in February of 23.
I would agree. I think that's what we should do too. Other thoughts? I think that we do, seems like we would like some input on this direction from the city commission.
In the meantime, I don't think we're gonna do anything until we hear yay or nay at this point in time.
I was hoping to hear back from FEMA before the meeting, but no luck.
Dennis and I are both pounding the pavement to get that answer. I've made calls, talked to our congressman's office a week and a half ago, still trying to get an answer. We should at least, even if we were turned down, should have some type of notification.
If it was over with, I think FEMA would have made an announcement by now, but there's been no communication through this whole process with this round of grants, other than all of a sudden they begin making awards about 2 months later than what they said they would. So we're just still in a holding pattern.
You know, to me, I think we've got the budget and we sure need the help, sounds like. So I would think we'd want to move forward. So.
It's kind of how Dennis and I feel. We would like, being that if it is to no, we want y'all's grace to go ahead. If it is a no, we'll be down to 2. And with also the notion that we will, we're hiring a grant writer.
Yes.
Dennis has been working over the last 12 to 18 months with Vince and Dan to replace all of our SCBA's. That's $200,000 total.
Nearly $300,000.
Almost $300,000 on those personal breathing apparatuses. It's AFG grant, correct?
Yes.
So it's an AFG grant. We'd already budgeted that grant writer to write that grant. We feel very good about that. That will fall in November, December.
Yeah, we'll be coming back pretty quick asking for permission on that grant.
On that grant. And then we probably would hire the same grant writer to write this one for Sabre in February. And Dennis, you mentioned that they've done those.
Yes, this grant writer is actually fire grant writer. That's what they specialize in, is writing grants for FEMA, or for us to submit to FEMA. I believe, Chief, we feel, 75% success on equipment grants and 95% success on staffing grants is their stats on that. So it sounds pretty promising. Anything else? Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. All right, takes us to item number 9, consider and take appropriate action on the August 31st, 2022 financial report by Finance Director Joel Wright. Joel?
Thank you, Mayor, Commission. So this is 11 months into the fiscal year. I'm just going to go through these. First of all is the balance sheet for the governmental funds. You see there the general fund, CIP capital projects fund, and the debt service fund. Those are presented individually following that three column combining page. For the general fund, we're at $5.5 million total assets, 4.3 million unassigned fund balance. For the revenues, sales tax is at 3.1 million. And there's a schedule right behind that that shows our sales tax for the past 5 years. So that continues to be higher each month over the same month last year. So we're over budget. Even at the end of August, we'll be well over budget on sales tax revenue by the end of the year. Total revenues, 11.3 million. Expenditures, We're within budget on everything that I show you here. Capital outlay is over budget, and that's due to the outdoor warning sirens that we have about 99% complete, but that was an unbudgeted expenditure. I will say by the end of the year, we will be over budget on several line items. Anything having to do with fuel and supplies, and just ordinary inputs are going to be affected by inflation, no doubt. So we'll have some amendments to do among line items because we are over a budget on a few of those. But overall, staff has done real well keeping things under control, and within our departments, we're under budget overall on most departments. At this point in time, we were a net decrease of $415,000. I will point out that as of August 31, we hadn't taken any internal transfers yet into the general fund. We budgeted for 1.2 million, but we haven't needed to do that. We'll see how we end up here at the end of September, what I can move from the utility fund over. Hopefully to get the general fund breaking even by the end of the fiscal year after we do all the accruals and all. But overall, pretty good shape on the general fund. The other general governmental type activity is the CIP fund, which again is new. As of August 31, we still had our cash balance in there for everything we had moved over there. We had cash of $585,000. And what that consisted of, just to remind you, we'd moved $150,000 for the outdoor warning sirens, $310,000 for the Hunsley Road storm drainage, and $120,000 for the 18th Street extension. In September, I've moved $460,000 out of this cash to reimburse the general fund. We had expended that $310,000 for the Hunsley Road and all of that outdoor warning sirens amount. We expended those out of the general fund, so we need to reimburse the general fund out of this cash that we had set aside in the CIP general fund. So at the end of September, you'll see we'll end up being a little over $120,000 in here, and that's what's left for the 18th Street extension that we'll be doing next year. On the expenditures for the CIP general, we do have at this point $13,000 that's for some engineering fees that we've incurred for the fire department burn house, even though we haven't been able to award that yet. We do have all of the engineering fees incurred, and just waiting for someone to volunteer or get hired, I should say, to build that. The other governmental fund is the debt service fund. Again, this is the cash that we collect from taxes to service the 2016 bond issue for the CAP. We have $310,000 at the end of the year. We've already serviced that debt, making total payments of $380,000 and collected property taxes of $357,000 for that. That's the governmental funds. The water and sewer fund, enterprise funds. Water and sewer fund, we're at $2,016,000 cash at the end of August. Total current assets of $3.6 million. We do have certificates of obligation balance is a little over $12 million at the end of August after we've serviced the debt and paid everything due. And unrestricted net assets in the utility fund of $2.2 million at the end of August. And in the way of revenues, $8.4 million in revenues, and we'll still have one more billing cycle to add to this. And then in the way of operating expenses, you see there we are over budget for supplies and contractual services. And again, I attribute that to high fuel prices and inflation. Those are all included in that line item. Overall, total operating expenses of $6.3 million and resulting net change of a decrease of $464,000 for the year-to-date. Going into the golf fund, at this point in time, we had current assets of $225,000, $52,000 of which, $53,000 of which was cash. The golf fund did owe general fund and the utility fund at this point in time $1.4 million. Did make transfers Friday, getting those paid, some of that paid down. And then we'll have, at the end of the fiscal year, we'll have a little bit of improvement in the unrestricted deficit, but it's at 1.6 million at this point in time of these financial statements. On the schedule of revenues and expenditures for the golf fund, overall we were 1.1 million on revenues, 1.4 million on operating expenses for an operating loss of 281,000. And then we also have debt payments that come out of that, and so the overall net loss at this point in time was 595,000. And again, we will have some transfers in September that will help that look a little better. We have the CIP fund for the enterprise funds. We have two funds actually. We have a CIP utility and a CIP golf. We have one bank account that serves both of those funds. So we have 3.1 million there at the end of August. And just like the general, I'll remind you of the projects that are covered in that. We've got 1.9 million of the first payment from the ARPA funds that will be used for the 4th Street pump station. Just a side note, we did get the second payment last week from the ARPA funds, equivalent of this, 1.975 million. So we're just under 4 million in cash, which at least we're earning interest on that. And I believe Joe's given the go-ahead to start those projects, so I'm just waiting to spend that. We also have in that fund 600,000 for the water and sewer infrastructure extension out to what formerly was being referred to as the Gerald property. We also have 418,000 there for the 10th Avenue sewer line. As of August, that hadn't been billed yet, but we've since paid that out. And then we also have 93,000, just under 100,000, 93,545 of accumulated green fees for the CIP fund. So that's just for the golf. So we've accumulated thus far since January that 93,000 to go toward the irrigation system improvement project when we get ready to do that. That's really all that I've got in the way of presentation. Do you have any questions on the financial statements that I can answer?
On golf, I mean, the revenues just really look good. Does the increase in the revenues, does that include that's to go to the CIP, or is that?
Not in the golf fund. That's all in the CIP golf fund. So if you look over on the very last page of the financial statements, you'll see a schedule of revenues and expenditures for the CIP funds, for the CIP golf fund. And that's where that 93,000 shows up in revenue. CIP fee.
Just increase in rounds and services. I mean, the numbers look a whole lot better.
Yeah, overall, we're doing well. And again, we budgeted for a transfers in, and we haven't done that yet. We will put some in there because we've got some interfund receivable payables that will forgive in effect, and so that'll show up as a transfer there. But as far as having to move cash over to the golf to keep them going, we haven't had to do that.
Stacy let us know today that we were 3% up, so we set another record compared to last year, over 31,000 rounds. So rounds are there.
Still strong.
And the sales of goods, that's way up. What is that?
It's over budget. That just goes with Pro Shop, the
concessions,
beer. That's all in that line item.
You know, bottom line, I mean, it just jumps out to me because we looked at the golf course, but we're 180,000 better.
Over budget, yeah.
Compared to budget, so it's pretty market.
And that's just through August, so we still got one more month, and he's got a lot of, or he had a lot of events in
Still got
September.
tournaments, yeah, still has tournaments going on.
Yeah, a lot more to go, yeah. He's kind of tired and grumpy, I don't know. He's probably ready for winter. He's had a good year. They're probably both tired and grumpy. Any more questions on the financial statements?
Mayor, I move that we approve the financial report for the city of Canyon as of August 31st, 2022.
Motion second to approve the quarterly finance report. All in favor, signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, like sign. Motion passes. Item number 10, consider and take appropriate action on the August 31st, 2022 investment report by Finance Director Joel Ruth.
Okay, thank you. This is the schedule of cash. Shows you what all of our cash balances were at the end of August. General fund, again, we just saw this in the balance sheet, but just under 2.2 million. Debt service, 310,952. Water and sewer fund, 2,016,000. The golf fund, 52,930. Capital equipment fund, 725,000, and the CIP general that I just went through, 585,000, and the CIP enterprise, 3.1 million. So total cash on the balance sheet of just under 9 million. Out of that, we've got restricted amounts or amounts that are already obligated. Those are listed there. 725,000 for equipment purchases. That's the capital equipment fund. And then the CIP funds, those are restricted or are designated already. And then the debt service cash is restricted, so we're hands off on that. So 4.8 million basically, and that's primarily in the general fund and the utility fund. And so you see there at the bottom how we measure up to our reserve policy. And we are below in total at this point in time, below it by 55,000 on the low end. Hoping that was gonna come back in September. I'm not ready to give you a complete number or final number on that. I don't think we're gonna be, I don't think we'll be very much over the minimum. If we are over the minimum, I think we're gonna finish pretty close to about what this was. But just to remind you, we did spend 900,000 cash, a budgeted expenditure to purchase the water department building back in fiscal year 21-22 earlier. So that took that cash balance down in the utility fund there at the very start of the year. So we have we've recovered that, but it hasn't put us farther in being within our reserve like we had hoped for. So we're still at the low end. It's just, it's a tough year.
Just a question that I had and asking earlier. I mean, to me, this is a huge one. You know, going into a potential bond issue, you know, or possibly a police station, and you know that our bond rating went down last time because we weren't in compliance with our reserve. I guess I know we're past September 30th. Is there any kind of reallocating or anything to make sure that at this point that we're within our minimum?
There's going to be there's a few things that got prepaid that at the end of September. That when I present this next time, that down there in that summary of the restricted and obligated cash, we'll account for those prepayments. There's some things that got paid early.
So can that back up and help?
We can on this schedule. I can't do that on the balance sheet. Cash has to be what the cash balance is on the financial statements. But for this presentation and for what we're doing internally, we can make adjustments for those kind of things that we know of. I've got a couple of payments that are coming from other entities that are late that we haven't gotten paid. Hopefully we'll get those in the next week or two, but had they been paid timely, we would have gotten them back into September. So,
You know,
But
a
it's-
comment here, just by me and conservative banker, and I can say it now because our reserves are no longer happy. I think just it behooves us as a commission to give enough leeway to where we're in the middle of this range, to where we're not, potentially hitting that minimum and that might affect our bond rating and all. So, but anyway, I think I would encourage that on the commission standpoint that, we allow some leeway to try to stay in the middle of that range and not be in a situation like we are right now. So.
I think management would be in agreement with that. I think we'd like to get this up. We'd like to get it up to the max actually, but especially this year with inflation and all, it's been a challenging year that way. But hopefully we can get that built back up. There is a second part of this investment report, and that is the schedule of secured deposits. This is a required disclosure that I need to give you. So again, this is the bank balances as of the end of August. Total bank balance in all of our accounts was 10.6 million at the end of August. Our bank had pledged securities of 16.8 million market value. So we're well secured on our deposits. If you look at the back or the last page there, you'll see the pledged customers report that comes from the bank, provides the details on the securities they have pledged and the market value of those securities. So we are within compliance on the collateralization of our deposits. Any other questions? Thanks for staying awake, John. Appreciate it. One more.
Questions for Joel or discussion? Would entertain a motion.
Move we approve the quarterly investment report.
Have a motion second to approve the quarterly investment report. All in favor signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, like sign. Motion passes. All right, Joel, I think we've got one more, item number 11. Consider and take appropriate action on resolution number 23-2022, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Canyon, Texas, adopting the City of Canyon's debt management policy. Joel?
So I covered this pretty much in detail last month. We deferred having you vote on that. So I'm not going to go into a lot of details. I will kind of talk through the metrics and just, remember the purpose of this is to just give definitions of the types of debt that we're going to incur, types of debt we're going to use, kind of give some fences for us when we're making considerations about issuing more debt. On the metrics, we're trying to do two things with these metrics. We're trying to keep our debt level in a responsible range for us financially with where we're at financially as an entity, but then also within our community, trying to keep us within balance for taxable property valuation with our population, and our ability to raise revenue within this community and being responsible with our debt. So those, just to remind you, those metrics, we do have tax supported debt, which is funded like the 2016 series with tax dollars, a separate tax rate. We have a pretty high policy limit for that, 25%. Our actual is only 3.85%. So if we actually went all the way up to that max, we'd have the capacity for increasing the annual debt service by over $3 million. But of course, that's tax supported debt, so that could only be done with an election. The other category is self-supported debt, so this would be our utility fund revenues, our golf revenues. That, we're measuring a debt service coverage by looking at our operating income, net of interfund transfers, so it's really what's coming in from outside. And we're setting a policy limit of 1.1. Our actual at this point in time, as of August 31, was 1.2, so we've only got capacity for about 160,000 additional debt service payment at our current levels. So that's the internal. Then we also look at the economic metrics, as I mentioned. So we look at total taxable valuation for our community, our city. We're setting a policy limit of 2% on that. We're only at 0.06. So again, we have a very low tax rate for debt service at this point in time. And then we also use voter-approved debt limit. And again, that one's low as well. We're setting that at 2.5%, and the actuals right now is only 0.4%. And then the total debt maximum, we're saying 4.5%, and our actual right now is only at 0.47, so we're well below that. We also look at our total debt per capita. So I'm using the Texas demographer population at this point in time for that's 16,316. So all of our outstanding debt is currently about 1,059 per taxpayer, or per population, per person. And we're setting that policy at 2,400, so we do have some capacity there. I think that's still pretty low compared to some cities that we looked at in the examples when we were putting this policy together. Additionally, in there, the policy does speak about us having responsibility to disclose. We put our full debt schedule, which I've given you, this kind of blue highlighted schedule. That's posted to our website every year. So our citizens can see exactly all the debt that's outstanding. And then we also are required to issue certain compliance to the SEC because we do have publicly traded debt, some of our bond issues.
The calculation spreadsheet that you got before the blue sheet, it's really nice. It really breaks down the debt services, what they fall under, as well as bonds, loans, capital leases. As y'all know, we have several capital leases through GovCap, but Joel does a great job of, pardon me, of breaking those amounts down on outstanding debt. So well done, Mr. Wright, on that. It really gives anybody that's a layperson that's not a banker, Gary, sorry, an understanding of what it looks like.
Again, it's just it's a tool to keep us out of trouble. That's really what this is for. Have any questions on debt management policy?
Paul, I know you missed a lot of the in-depth discussion.
All look good.
So I figured we'd go over the metrics.
That's all I have in the way of presentation.
This was on the strategic plan and the comprehensive plan, or just
I think
strategic?
strategic.
Strategic plan was one of the goals to adopt the policy.
Obviously, it's pretty conservative, to say the least, on debt. So that's what we strive for. It was extreme conservative when it hit my desk.
Joe sent me back to the drawing board a couple of times.
Miser came out of my mouth a few times, and we had to. I'm like, Joel, we're not even going to be in compliance day one. You got to reel that back a little bit. But now it's a conservative based. Biggest thing was trying to help that everybody could understand the metrics and how that all flowed. So that's the key. If you can't understand that, please ask, and we will be happy to explain that. Joel's done a great job. He really took this one by the horns, and we looked. How many did you look over, debt policies?
probably a dozen or so, but there are really two that we looked at for putting ours together.
'Cause none of this is a requirement, it's just good practice, so nothing's in a requirement, but it also will help, kind of what Gary said, it'll help with the bonding and, increase our bond rating, but it's good practice.
If there's no other discussion, then I move that we adopt resolution number 23-2022.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to adopt resolution number 23-2022. Further discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, like sign. Thank you, Joe. Thank you. Okay, I believe that takes us to item number 13, our executive session. As we go to that, I know we've got several deputy students in here. Thank you all for joining us, so I appreciate it. So hopefully a good example of your local government at work. We will now retire into exec session pursuant to 551.071, consultation with attorney, 551.074, personnel matters, city manager, EDC director, and planning and development director, and 551.074, board appointments, Canyon Economic Development Corporation. And with that, what time do we have?
31.
Okay. We will retire into exec session. Sounds good.